Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I'm John, my co-host is Andy, and we're going to be discussing the premiere of Millennials versus Gen X, but we're doing it differently this week. For one, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can already tell we're on video, which is a rare thing.
We are!
And the reason we're on video is that I am in Canada. So last week we were the transnational podcast. This week we're a
Canadian
trans-provincial podcast. There we go.
That's right. And I can sit here in Alberta complaining about you darn Central Canadians always ruining it for us.
Yeah, I'm an official Ottawan now, I went down to the curling. I put my feet in the hack, and then I got past the hog line, I
think that's still Minnesota accent you're giving there, but it is.
You know what? It's as close as I can do.
It is funny that of the two of us in this podcast, you are now the person here who has done curling, because I have never curled.
It's really weird. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was goofy fun, but it's pretty weird. I have no idea who thought up that sport.
I guess if you're just looking at an ice long enough, it's like, okay, yeah, the stick and the puck thing. But what else can we do? Let's throw rocks.
We got this big rock right here. What can we do with it?
That's right. I discovered this thing called shuffleboard. What if we were on the board? But yeah, no, I imagine curling would be fun. It's just, I'm not a hick, so what are you going to do? But that's probably not why you guys tuned in here for our deep curling analysis. Instead, we got ourselves a new season of Survivor.
Yay! So, one more thing, though, before we move on to analysis of that first episode of this season. Since I'm in Canada, we've got to celebrate correctly. So I'm introducing myself to some Canadian-specific snacks. One, we have ketchup chips. Very exotic. You cannot get those in America. Two, per recommendation of other Canadians, coffee crisp. Again, north of the border treat. And last but not least, I'll be trying Smarties for the first time. Not the same as we have in America, these Smarties. A lot more M&M-like they look.
Yes, so this will be very exciting. I'm particularly looking forward to the ketchup chips, because I'd say that's probably one of the top 10 Canadian delicacies are. So much as we have a cuisine, obviously number one is craft dinner macaroni and cheese. People might think it's poutine, but no. If you're a true Canadian, you know that KD is the height of Canadian cuisine. So why don't we get one of those out of the way before we start talking about this?
All right, what do you want to do? Dealer's choice? You have a pick for me that you want me to try first?
Well, I should have planned this out. Like which do you start off with a light aperitif or something, and then maybe move on to a main course. Maybe we should try it with the Smarties. I think that would be just a nice little amuse-bouche, really.
So fancy and cultured. All right, I'm just gonna go for like a big handful here.
Sure. I'm not sure there's a difference in the taste of the colors, so.
It's just M&Ms.
With slightly different chocolate,
like a thicker shelled M&M.
Yes. I'd say superior to M&Ms, but maybe that's just, my cultural, bias.
I will say, the chocolate is a little better.
Yeah. I would also say that I probably prefer the one with the peanut. What's that? ET ones, Reese's Pieces of candy-coated, treats. Those would be better, but,
yes.
It's chocolate instead of peanut butter. So if you're going for
peanut butter,
so if you're going for the candy coated chocolate, Smarties would be the superior choice, and thus definitely worth the duty free that I'm sure. Just Canadian whiskey and Smarties.
What sounds like the meal of champions.
All right, so you had your first taste of Canada, and now we also had our first taste of how annoying. Pushing the theme of Millennials versus Gen X would be right off the bat. I
mean, we told you in the preview podcast, buckle down. This is going to happen. It's going to be shoved down your throat these first couple weeks. You got probably, I'd say, at least 3 more weeks of this left. So just soldier through it. We're going to get through it. Hopefully it's a good season in spite of it, but This is like the price of admission.
Yeah, I will say to a lot of the cast's credit, they were, laughing at themselves and having to do this. He's choking on some Smarty bits there. But the ones that were like diving right in, I've got my things planned, like Paul, like that's when the eyes start rolling. And thankfully for us, it wasn't just us rolling their eyes. Of course, we had Michaela really joining in on
that. Man, she was not lying about not being able to hide those facial expressions, because that girl's face, it says it all. It's all kinds of expressive up in there.
Yeah, and I think actually that helped make that segment tolerable. But as we said, this is going to be annoying because it wasn't just at the Matt chat with Probst. When they get back, I think Paul again and maybe Chris are trying to be like, oh, we're actually going to work together, work hard, because that's what our generation does. And maybe.
I feel like you could have scripted these first 5 or 6 confessionals. Like, I could have written the script and I would have been off maybe 5%. Like, I missed a word here and there.
Yeah, and it should say, there's not just new people who do this, right? Like, they give a returnee second chance, and the savvy guns, they're planning this is my second chance to finally do this and all that. So, thankfully, there it was just a funny little thing, like a meme. You take a drink when they do it or something. This is just so annoying, and it's especially annoying for me because suddenly I somehow take personal offense at the notion that our generation works hard. I just,
I mean, you've got, it's, again, small sample size, but 2 people right here.
Yeah, it's not really. No, I like using as much time on the internet as I can. Come on.
Sure. Who doesn't?
That's what we're doing right now. So then once they do all that chat, it's time to gather stuff. And I kind of like that they give him choices this time out.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was weird, the hammer, was there nails with that, or was it just a hammer?
When you're a hammer, John, everything's a nail. No, it was just a freaking, it wasn't even a good hammer. I think that was the test to just see if you're dumb.
Yeah, because, I mean, unless there were nails, and even if there are nails, you can get a little creative with the hammer. You could use it for some other things, but it's still kind of got limited use. Whereas you can use a lot of other things as a hammer.
Yeah, like the big frying pan that they had there.
That was my point, is you take the frying pan and you just, use it to smash things like a hammer. It's a lot harder to use a hammer as a pot and pan. So, that seemed like an easy choice to me.
Yeah, the hammer actually, you say you can use it for other things. Kind of limited. It's not a lot of utility for a hammer besides hitting things hard. I mean, you could brain somebody with it.
It has a claw end. You could do something with that.
Pull the non-nails that you have. Yeah, maybe open a coconut, sure. But yeah, that was not well thought out. If it was tools versus cooking utensils, then I think you have something to discuss. But it's just get the F out of here with this janky ass hammer. I'm gonna get me some bowls. I'm gonna get me some frying pan. But the other one was a little more interesting. Oh, it looks that we already have a visitor. Oh, wow, brand appropriate balloon here. Very nice. That was not planned.
You're on brand. So hey, look at this. I can improvise while we're talking. If you need to, you want to say hi?
Christopher, would you like to say hi?
Hi.
Hi. He doesn't know.
Do you want to tell everybody good night?
Good night.
Oof.
To him, I'm just John the Canadian. He doesn't even know.
That's right. Everybody, he doesn't know that the world outside of Canada exists.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though
so anyway, as I was going to say, the fishing gear versus the chicken's choice.
That's a real choice.
Tough because you don't know what your beach is. Mm-hmm. So if you go and grab fishing gear, you could be on this beach with these crazy, rough, impossible waves. You're not going to be able to fish anyway. So you basically wasted your choice. You don't know what your beach is yet. So it's
it could be in the middle of a cyclone.
Almost like that could happen sometime. Anyway, but if you take the chickens, it's the bird in hand. Yeah. And so anyway, although it was funny that Taylor didn't view it as like, we're going to eat the chickens. He viewed it as we're going to eat the eggs, which, sure, you can. You know, 1 or 2 eggs split between 10 people does not go so far.
No, maybe it goes farther than some of those like little, sardine-like fish that people sometimes bring back. Like, look at all I got. But yeah, no, the chickens are to eat chicken. That's what the chickens are for. And
right.
You're going to get a lot. You might end up getting more meat off of that than you're going to get off of some measly fish. So I think I would have grabbed the chickens too. Plus, frankly, the chickens just leads to better television, as we've seen in recent years.
Sure. Although I would not keep one as a pet.
No.
There's enough mouths out there as it is. Sorry, Ty. I appreciate the animal welfare argument.
Well, maybe if you're playing the long game, you keep the chickens and you name one. It's not, I think, like Figgy or Michelle or somebody wanted to name one because you're trying to get the SIA Humanitarian Award. Because.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I like it. I mean, if that was the strategy behind that, bravo.
Yeah, I haven't checked the secret scene, so somebody let me know. But that's something to think about. So I do like whenever the show forces them into decisions, especially when there's very little time to make those decisions. But as I say, one decision was interesting, the other one was not so much. The other new thing that we got in that whole scramble for things is this new legacy advantage.
Yeah. Long time for the payoff, right? I mean, day 36. So we're basically waiting until the finale before we find out what this is. I didn't see Probst mention what it will do in any interviews. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I slept all day instead of reading interviews, so who knows? That's kind of what I thought too. It's like, I guess maybe the utility of it, much like the seemingly only utility of like the extra vote, no matter which way they've done it, is to give us something to talk about and to theorize throughout the entire season. Because it's like, wow, okay, how likely is it that the person who has it will actually use it, whatever it may be?
So that's the interesting thing, is that it's going to get used because it can get passed to people. And I did find out from one of the interviews today that it gets passed privately. So if Jessica has it, she gets voted out. She then says, I want to give it to person X. Person X's bag, like discreetly. Not like someone walks into camp and there's like, here you go, here's your advantage that Jessica gave you, but it shows up.
Yeah, as you say, that will guarantee it actually gets used, because that is obviously was a problem with these other game things they throw in there. It's like, maybe it never actually comes up. You have this double vote thing, and it actually led to really interesting television, but it doesn't actually get played. And then the other double votes things got played and just killed the person that played it. So that's something, but I don't know how much it's going to affect gameplay until the day it does. Because, the
best you can do is try to lie about what it's going to do. But if you're showing the note gives you no hint. If anything, you don't want to show the note because it tells you if you get voted out, someone else gets this. So it kind of gives them an incentive to vote you out so that they might get it.
Yeah, or at the very least, allow you to get voted out. Because obviously, they can't attack you, because then that lessens the chance of you being able to get it. But if I'm in an alliance with Jessica and I find out she has this thing to give to people, it's like, I will be very nice to Jessica and try to get her voted out without her ever knowing. And just like be really sad when she's leaving, like,
I did my best. I tried so hard.
But you're going to give me the thing now,
I'll
right?
check my bag tomorrow for no reason.
It's that seems like a disadvantage. Like, this power can be transferred to others, but only upon your death. Seems like an invitation to kill you. Our basic stance always, and it's still true for this, is I'm okay to wait and see how things go. I do like that Survivor tries new things. 36 days. That's like, imagine being like a casual and like, kind of barely paying attention to maybe even missing an episode, and all of a sudden this thing becomes like a thing mentioned a couple times during the season, and all of a sudden like the finale, it becomes a big deal. That's a lot of time to remember something like this.
Yeah, and they're going to have the intro to the finale because people are going to forget. But more importantly, it's got to be something big, right? Because you can't wait from the first episode of the season to the finale, and you get there and it's like, oh, you got some, you move ahead to the next round in one of these immunity challenges. Everybody's like, what the hell did we wait for that for?
Yeah, you get to drop one ball or something like that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I will say that like that challenge advantage that used to be a thing, and I think it's just gone away the past couple seasons, has paid off every time but once. But yeah, it does feel like we waited for that. Maybe it's just because they don't plan on doing auctions anymore. So I don't know. Obviously, yeah, those are just our first initial thoughts on something that we don't really know much about. But yeah, I'm surprised that they're forcing you to wait that long. You feel like it, because it becomes so inert so quickly, and also because it was so random, right? It wasn't like it was something that was earned or anything like that. It's just Jessica happened to be there when somebody else didn't see it.
Yeah. And speaking of not knowing much about Survivor, that's a great transition into talking about Figgy and what are their names?
Taylor
Jay and other bro. There you go. Figgy and the Bros, or as they call themselves, the Triforce. What's with the Millennials? Got to have names for themselves. # team whatever. Because even the other group of the Millennials had to be the Freaks and Geeks. Come on, Millennials. I got to name. You don't have to name everything you do.
And everything is
you can
branded.
Just be. I'm saying, geez, these people.
It's # Triforce.
Yeah.
I think it might be a Big Brother thing. Like, it sounds like Big Brothers, like they just always name alliances, and is it hard to imagine those three people, some of them sitting around watching the awful people that are in Big Brother? Probably not. So dumb. So they pulled in a fourth. That you're the accountant here. Just help me out. There's 4. Is that enough to control everything?
Well, let me run some quick numbers. Hey, by the way, while I'm running these numbers, did you happen to notice there's a new accountant starring Ben Affleck as a murderous action hero accountant?
Yeah, it's basically your life story.
That's my intellectual property.
They found your screenplay. You should have protected your passwords a bit more. Yeah, Shireen Forever 6'9" was not going to cut it.
So anyway, the Millennials thing, the Triforce, just obviously brings back to mind the Caramoan group where they had the little what was it called, the Cool Kids? The Cool Kids Alliance. And once again, it was a group of 4 out of a group of 10. Hey, surprise! 4 is less than the 6, and in the 6 vote the 4 out. I don't know that I see that group being so appealing that they're going to bring in the so-called Freaks and Geeks. So, yeah, they better hope that they just stay strong for a little while.
Yeah. So, when before the episode, people on our site were largely predicting that Michelle would be the first boot from that tribe. And I kind of resisted that thought because I was thinking, I'm not sure being, young and vapid will be a problem with this millennial tribe, right? It's a bunch of young, stupid people. So, because they're all young and stupid. Not all, though. We already have some favorites. And I was thinking, young people get along. And it's, generally they can be popular by having these traits. But kind of what I was overestimating is that popular people love exclusivity, and that's why they can't see the idea that just hanging out with the 4 of us amongst 10 people is a problem, because it's always been good for them in their life. They get to hang out with the people that are most like them, and everybody else just wants to be like them so badly that what are they going to do about it? It's not like they vote them out of high school. No, they vote them prom king. And it seems like it's always kind of like the same configuration. So, it's douchebag and his bro. He finds a hot chick and her friend, and then that's kind of the 4. And as you say, in Caramoan, it was Eddie, Reynolds, Allie, Hope. In South Pacific, you had Ozzy, Keith, Whitney, and Elise. But here's it didn't work out very well for Elise. Obviously, it didn't work out well for any of them in Caramoan. But here's another configuration like that: Ozzy, James, Amanda, Parvati.
And I don't know if you know this, but for we'll say half of that group, it worked out all right.
Yes. So here's another approach. So it does look like, they're doomed because it's just so obvious to everybody. It's annoying. Who wants to be the people left out from, Kappa Kappa Survivor? Props to Hannah for that. I thought that was actually a good joke. But maybe it makes sense to be the Suri of that group because I don't think they're going to be the brain trust, right? Like it wouldn't take too much to kind of take over.
So who do you think would step into that role? Like who's gonna say, I can run this circus? Do you think like Zeke is gonna say, I fit in better with this group, but I could lead these idiots?
Maybe Zeke, maybe Mari, maybe Michaela. I think there's options. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that could be an opportunity, right? Like it's like these idiots are never going to win, and I will be able to have my way, as opposed to hanging out with equals who might challenge me or take me out. Now, actually, for me personally, I think it's a better idea to team up with equals because it's tough to manage idiots, but it worked out in Micronesia almost for Suri. It certainly worked out better than probably the opposite would have for her. So that is just something to consider that, while it seems like it's always a dumb idea for a minority group of 4 to separate themselves as being super cool, it doesn't always fail. I think it probably does more often. One World, if you separate the gender thing, you had the 4 bros, and that didn't work out so well. But I kind of think the cool kids hung out in the 4th season. Rob and Sarah and Marquesa. Yeah, so...
where the purple rock came from. You remember that one?
This is live television. I can't always think of all the names, and I was about to say Micronesia. So it's just, but more to the point, goddamn, are they stupid? And this isn't a surprise, obviously, but wow. The whole time I'm watching, it's like, no, I mean, you can be this stupid. Obviously, you're this stupid. Frankly, baked into my prediction of Taylor being the winner of the season was that he was stupid. It wasn't like seeing this made me like double back on my winner's prediction. It was like, okay, well, he's playing the Fabio handbook here. But it just keeps going. And it's like, yeah, we're having so much fun. Look at us. Let's hang out. Just us. It's just,
Well, one point to their credit, they were the ones that were like, hey, let's go down on the beach and we'll swim and we'll play and have fun. And the rest of the group at least went down there with them. They didn't all go in the water with them. I think Mari and Adam might have stayed out, and maybe one other. At the very least, they exerted some sort of control. They got the group to go along with them.
Yeah, and I will say, like, especially because they have their 3 days, right? Like, I think if they would have went to tribal council, this might have really doomed them, but they didn't. We don't know if they're going to go next tribal council. Preview suggests maybe not. That could be enough time for, let's say, a kid in high school really wanting to hang out with the cool kids. Kind of like Eric Reichenbach really wanting to hang out with the cool kids. So it could turn around. And this isn't good news, by the way. This isn't what I'm rooting for. But, before we get too smug, like, oh, those idiots. Sometimes things work out for idiots, and it's not good.
I just want to see the scene where Will walks up. Hey, guys, do you mind if I join you? That would be great. You guys seem cool. Let's hang out.
Why did he tell everybody he was in high school right away?
I mean, you mentioned in the preview, you could at least get away with 20 with that voice.
Yeah.
You're like, guys, I'm like a sophomore in college right now. I've really been partying hard. It's what made my voice like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is worse than eating the Smarties. I will say that I guess Probst kind of blew up the spot a bit by mentioning there was somebody born in that year, but come on. As evidenced, I don't think Taylor, Jay, and Figgy were going to do the math and figure out that age, so.
Yeah, but at a certain point, once they started talking, like, how old are you? How old are you? How old are you? Even the idiots would have gotten around to it. Like, okay, so it's that kid.
Yeah, he could just fool them all with his talk of all his life experience. Like, I have fun at my adulting job where I do business things.
I drink lots of the drinks that are for adults, and I show my ID, which says I am 21.
But no, instead, barely legal Will is telling everybody not only that he's 18, but that he's in high school. Like, come on, at least you're a freshman. Pull it off there. But we'll see if it's a problem.
And shout out to one of our commenters. I think it was Side Character who nicknamed him True Christian. Bravo.
All right. So I think it's time for you to try another snack.
Okay. So are we saving ketchup chips?
I think so. I think that will destroy the palate otherwise. Although maybe a coffee crisp is a nice thing to end, right? Like the coffee that you have at the end of the meal.
I feel like if I consume something coffee-ish after ketchup, that's gross. Although it's not like the reverse order is that much better. By the way, I was eating breakfast today, and they were actually the past 3 days. They've asked me if I want ketchup with my breakfast, and at no point did I see something on my plate other than one day when I had like home fries or something. I was like, oh, I can see putting ketchup on that. Ketchup on.
Were there hash browns? Like little potatoy things? No?
No. I had French toast. I had eggs. I had a bagel. Like yogurt. I put ketchup on any of these things?
Yeah, no, I'm at a loss. I think, and this is, try not to vomit in your mouth, everyone listening. It might have been for the eggs.
Yeah, that's the closest you could even come. Like, no one's putting ketchup on their bagel.
I hope not. No, I would say no.
Anyway.
I've never seen that. I could imagine for eggs, but I feel like that's something that like a freak should have to ask for. It shouldn't be offered. Yeah, if you had hash browns, I would get it, but ugh.
Yeah.
Anyway, coffee crisp.
Right, so, coffee crisp. Let's do this.
The only kind of coffee I have.
I am a coffee aficionado, so I will have exacting standards that this might not live up to.
Yeah, I don't think it tastes anything like coffee is. It's hence why it's one of my favorite chocolate bars.
It does smell a bit like coffee. It's very wafery.
Yeah.
I'm trying to describe like what other sort of thing it tastes like. What they're called for Americans. I don't eat candy enough to know what this compares to. Sort of Kit Kat like, I guess, but with a hint of coffee in there. Tasty though. That outranks the Smarties. That was not a contest. That was good.
Yeah, coffee's one of my favorites. It's one of the ones I'll steal from my kids' Halloween candy. So
that's a winner. I usually go for the Reese's, like you said, not just the Reese's Pieces, but I do the peanut butter cups too. I grab those.
Oh yeah, those are big.
Like, hey kids, good job with that. Yoink.
I gotta say, it's a pretty bold, person giving out peanut butter to kids on Halloween.
Listen, if you're a parent, and you just say beforehand, like, hey.
Meanwhile, my kid can't bring peanut butter into the school. Like, if you brought it to the school, shut it down. I gotta clean it all out.
You're bringing the hazmat suits. We've got peanut butter on campus.
That's right. But we'll hand it out at the Oscars. All right. So, let's move on to the other tribe. Gen Xers, right. The fun balls of fun.
Those guys were just a barrel of laughs. The one person that came closest to being a barrel of laughs was David. Not so much for things that he intended to be funny, I don't think.
Yes, we weren't laughing with David.
Right. Nor were they. David was, as expected, a bit of a spaz. And I mean, he knew. It's not like he didn't know how he was coming off to people. Eventually he realized, perception of me might need some explaining. So he walked it back and said, look guys, I'm a freaking spaz and I'm paranoid and I'm anxious. So I went looking for idols. So that's why I've been acting weird. And that was dumb and my bad. I won't ever do that again. Which I think helps. I think for the long term, that's going to help him. But at the same time, people don't necessarily want to trust you if you're always going to be that anxious and paranoid. Yeah,
you're just harshing their vibe, really. And it's kind of, I think, one of his biggest problems is just a failure to be able to read the room, And frankly, given what he said about his social abilities, that's not surprising. But like, I don't think like Brett and Chris in that moment when they're working that's the time to be like, hey, what about this? What about that? You know, it's time to kind of chill and try to bro out a bit. It's certainly not the time to be all like, ah.
I like the idea that David's gonna bro out a bit. You know, just let loose.
Sure,
He
why
seems
not?
like the guy that can pull it off.
Well, and if you think you can't, then maybe not try to work the alliance with these two guys. Try it with somewhere else. But at the same time, like it seemed like it's just like a bunch of fail every time you see him. He's getting like a Fishbockian type edit. But everything he did wrong, from being way too anxious, from looking for the idol, from going a little hard too fast with Chris and Brett, I think ultimately might be the reasons why he's still here. Because I think in the end, Chris and Brett still felt like they had more of a connection with David than they did with Rachel. And that probably is because he spent that time with them and talked to them and like very, very smoothly is like, I trust you. I trust you.
Did you notice he did like the Chris Traeger double finger thing, like, Chris, I believe in you. Jessica, trust you. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, very, very, very smooth. He incepted them. And then, so the looking for the idol, really bad play. And to be leaving people, especially when you're already having trouble and feeling nervous about it, to be so wide out in the open doing it. But I think the paranoia of him having an idol might also have shifted the target off of him. So it's like he did everything wrong, but I think it helped.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like he's in danger anytime soon, necessarily, at least. He's got that going for him.
Well, I'd say if he, belly flops again on another challenge, then maybe they're like, okay, we made the wrong call. We should get rid of him. But I do think he might be in the key alliance as currently constructed. So as ugly as it was, and I don't think he's fitting in very well. In fact, if we were still doing it, I'd be tempted to say he has zero chance of winning. I do think I actually kind of found a way in to avoid getting voted out when it felt like he was like not only the first boot, but like the firstest boot. It was like not a good episode for him until the very end.
Yeah, he should have tried to bro out with Sunday instead, don't you think? That would have been great.
Maybe she would have liked him more. Maybe she's like, get rid of this guy. Huh? Just chill, would you? I can't do it. Your Minnesota is much better than mine. I keep going into like Saskatchewan Aboriginal or something. It's not just something I could do very well.
I'll have to take a second shot at the Canadian accent before we're done here.
Had you been hearing it a lot?
A lot. You know what else? I've been noticing a lot of unironic mustaches.
Oh yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. Because I think like what you guys think of the Canadian accent is really concentrated in the area you are. Because we actually do have regional differences up in Canada. Because I clearly never sound like anything but like an American newscaster.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Would never spot it.
Not at all. Let's talk about boots. Huh?
All right. Anyway, let's move on. So Probst comes to their camp. Day 2, I guess it was. Or actually, no, he didn't even come to their camp first. Tree mail. It was like, wow, that looks like it's wrapped in a tarp. Unwrap that bad boy and use that thing. Like, who cares if it's supposed to be? Just use it. Turns out that's what it was. It was the tarp for them. It was what I called the participation tarp, because everybody got one, because we're all a team and everyone deserves one. So it was this weird, like, oh, this storm is going to be rough, so we're going to give you a tarp thing. Like, oh, wow, they must have been anticipating something bad. And then, I mean, I know it was coming because we'd seen the preview. But then it was like, okay, so this is actually a lot rougher than we thought. And Adam, I think, to his credit, was the only one that thought, like, oh, this is bad not just for us and some cameramen, but people live on Fiji and might get very, very badly hurt by this.
Yeah, that was a really good moment for Adam. I think that was when I was like, I think I might like this kid because he might have some perspective. And we should say that he might not have been the only person to say such a thing. He's the only one we saw say such a thing.
That's right. It made the air.
But yeah, I kind of like, in retrospect, with seeing the way everything like evolved, the idea at first, like, "Ooh, this storm's really big. Well, let's give him a tarp. That should take care of it."
They're good. They won't get rained on anymore. I mean, the 50+ mph winds.
Yeah, just maybe if they can use as a shield. I wasn't on Twitter like when the episode was on because I live in a different time zone. I actually did do a little bit of live tweeting once I caught up, but I can't read Twitter on the one on the West Coast for failure of being spoiled. Do you know if there was like a bunch of crusty old survivors complaining about them getting babied about this? Because I almost anticipate there would be.
Yeah, and I assumed too, but my feed was going so fast last night. I don't know. I think it was just because it was the premiere. There were so many tweets just flying by. The one I did catch, though, was Alexis because she was from Cagayan. And I do remember, I think it was Cass in her interview with you, mentioned, they had this big bad storm or whatever, and they considered evacuating them or something, but did not for some. I don't remember what the whole story was. But anyway, so she had to bring that up as like, oh, these kids 4 seasons later can't tough it out like we did back in the day.
Sorry, you dropped out for a second there. Yeah, no, that's fun. And I can understand, like, if it's just tarps, then it'd be like, hey, we've gotten a lot of rain in the past, too. But I would hope people would felt a little bad when they saw that the Gen X probably would have died if they would have stayed, right?
Yeah, the nice little after effects of the tree having fallen over. And again, as a Floridian that has lived through several hurricanes, yeah, that's always a possibility. So probably a good idea that they got them out of there.
Yeah, and if they would have gotten hurt or died as a result of weather, no more Survivor. So yes, they need to get them out of there because, human life and also liability. I don't care how strong your waiver is. If you're like, no, sorry, game show contestants, you can't come inside when there's a hurricane, it's not going to be that strong.
Right, exactly. There are lawyers that could get that money for you.
And I guess it's like, in some ways, the Cyclone, the evacuation probably kind of hurt the momentum of the episode. I still feel like I don't have a good sense of people, although, one episode, not a big deal. But it's pretty memorable, right? Like, we're never going to forget the opening of this season. It's the one where people were evacuated due to a cyclone, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were some complaints, too. The same sort of thing you said. Like, usually the nice thing about it is you get some character development with the whole cast. You get to see some relationships building, those sorts of things. But how are you not going to show the storm? So that's got to take some airtime from the show, and it maybe bit into some stories of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got time, and also there's a good chance that we don't want to get to know a lot of these people. But yeah, let's say, it was kind of incredible. It shows why Survivor is different from any other, say, network competitive show anyway, that we're getting, footage of, the powerful destruction force that is nature.
You don't think it's going to happen on The Voice?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know where they, how fast the chairs turn around when it's time to look, but I think no. I don't think it'll help it won't help Survivor win any Emmys, of course, because, The Voice is the new king. Take that, Amazing Race. But yeah, I do think it kind of reminds you that, this is a real thing they're doing. Maybe they don't emphasize the survival elements like they used to because that's boring television, but when they need to, it was kind of impressive.
Yeah. One element they always do emphasize, though, is the challenge, because you have to show that this time. And it seems like they're just moving towards this in general.
The choose your own adventure.
Yes. They focused on choices in the challenge. More and more in the recent seasons, this has been happening. This time you could do the shortcut, and it would just basically make your puzzle at the end a little more difficult. Strategy-wise, did you have any thoughts when you first saw that option?
my first thought was like, hey, cool. Let me try and figure this out. I think, and then I was kicking around things like, oh, maybe you try it something first, and then if it's hard, you take the shortcut. But I realized, no, that's a bad idea. And I think Zeke was the one that put it into that when I believe Taylor was suggesting that, because you've already blown any advantage if you don't just go for it. Do it or do not. I think the balance beam is always interesting because it seems like it should be very easy, but this is where being a super fan and having people that have seen a lot of Survivor will tell you, no, it's not. It's really hard. It seems like people always struggle. So I think that was the one that you definitely have to do.
And that was my first thought when I saw that you could skip the balance beam. I was like, someone invariably in a group of 10, one person will suck at the balance beam. So, play the odds, skip the balance beam.
Yeah. And again, and it's like they often do balance beam type stuff early on. And as I said last week, early on, it seems to be when people struggle the most with, the changing conditions, the lack of sleep, the fact that they haven't eaten like they used to. So, you're only a couple feet off the ground, but for somebody that's used to consuming, 2,000 calories a day or whatever, now you're up there, balance is an issue. So, if you could, because once they flipped it over, that's not a balance beam anymore. You're just running across. And I think that is worth the extra part. Now, what's interesting more is about the rope maze. And obviously, it's easy to criticize the choice because one team did it and won, and one team didn't, took the shortcut and lost. But I can get why the Gen Xers would do that.
Yeah, I mean, Probst even kind of hinted at it. Like, you've got some bigger bodies going through there. Maybe make it easier on you. And then plus, I think David had said, hey, guys, don't worry. I got puzzles. I'm the master. I got this. I have puzzles laid down for me like lovers, as someone once said.
Yeah, I can hear him. You'll have to wait till you download the podcast tomorrow. I know, that's funny. It's if anybody would ever listen to this. I know.
Anyway.
And I actually saw David, he before going out there, he bought like a 3D printer and printed off Survivor puzzles and practiced them. Clearly not this one. So like I said, I think I can understand why Gen X would not want to do that part. I think then, though, maybe you kind of have to try the balance beam because I don't know if you can take that big a fallback.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it was only 10 pieces difference, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if you hear Probst tell it, it was fair because of quote unquote math. Like more pieces, so that makes sense math wise. I want to see the algorithm that they ran to come up with that one.
Yeah, I could see though the 10 more pieces then changes the entire configuration and it takes that much more to try and figure out how something goes together. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. It also kind of creates a bit of a dilemma, right? It's like, well, if we do it, then maybe they'll do it too because now, they already know there's a disadvantage coming back. But then the other side is like, oh, well, we can gain a big advantage if we don't do it. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting, but at the same time, I can't really fault anybody. I can't fault Gen X's for doing it, even if. Regardless of how much you believe in somebody's puzzle ability or not. What I can criticize them for is why the heck was Rachel the one breaking that totem?
I don't know. I mean, really, there was a lot of confusing choices. Also, I don't know why she was on the puzzle first with David. Was that, again, something that she volunteered for?
Yes. So and we saw her volunteering, and I'm guessing it was for smashing the thing. I wasn't focused enough, so anybody who wants to, confirm or deny. But yeah, as they're showing the strategizing, she was like, "I'm really good at." But yeah, it's like I don't care if she says she's amazing, like she's got some kind of master stroke to break things. You put a big dude onto the smashy part. That's just not that complicated, especially because there's no simple division. Like one person has to do this and another person has to do that. No, it's like you've got three big men, force, acceleration. That's how it works.
Could make a cop joke there, but
I'm sure he has no experience swinging a nightstick. Actually, he might not. Apparently, they just reach for their guns right away. I was
I
not
do
going
feel
to go
really
there
weird,
this week.
by the way, walking around in Canada without a gun on me at all times. You know, I'm very afraid that one of you Canadians might aggressively approach me, and I'm not armed. Scary situation.
It is pretty tough, and they'll like ask you where the nearest Tim Hortons is, and then you'll be like there and there. But yeah, no, like it's, and then as evidenced, Chris, I believe, took the second one, or maybe it was Brett, and just demolished it in one stroke. It's like, yeah, big guys, weight, force. It's not that complicated. It's not rocket science, it's physics. So that kind of leads into Rachel. You went home. Do you really think it's because of the challenges?
I mean, the challenges didn't hurt. If they'd won the challenge, she couldn't have gone home.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my prediction for this week had been that, and it was funny too because I went back and forth on whether it was going to be Cece or Rachel. Just, you know,
what are you talking about? We nailed this prediction on the podcast.
Listen, we obviously got the first boot thing right, but I was just saying that I debated in my head.
There you
go. And you know, I eventually settled on it being Cece, but the same logic applied to Rachel, that it was just going to be some minor thing in the challenge, and then certain other factors that exist and always exist in Survivor, and they did. And it was funny because there was a lot that was unprecedented in this episode. That specific part was not at all.
Yeah, so did she get voted out because of her failure at the challenge? No.
I mean, it's the failure of not fitting in, and it's, you know, whether that's her fault specifically or just, you know, she, for some reason, whatever reason it might be, and you can come up with your own conclusions. And I don't think it was anything devious or overt, but she didn't fit in with the group. And we saw certain specific examples of her just personality-wise not clicking with everybody out there.
Yes, I don't know what it could be that on a very quick basis, trying to figure out how is these two people that got all the votes not like the rest of us. But it sure was something. It seemed to be something that comes up almost all the time on Survivor. But yeah, no, it's all coincidences and all easily explained in individual circumstances. That's how statistics work. But yeah, I mean, I do think she had set herself up, and I do think anytime you do say, I'm really good at something, and then not be good at that, it's not good. But of course, if people like you, or you know, have done even some bit of team building, like, say, David, who is otherwise so hapless, then they'll look past your challenge failure, and, oh, at least you tried. When you don't fit in, suddenly it's an easy way to explain your vote, which might actually be based on something else.
Yeah, the weird thing with me is we didn't see at CC getting votes until we actually got to tribal council. The only thing that you could even say, oh, maybe this was the tip-off, was the fact that CC was socializing with Rachel.
Yeah.
But even then, she didn't vote the same way Rachel did. They clearly weren't that close.
Yeah, no, that was, I mean, that's the problem. That's why it's hard to explain this vote without, you know, mentioning the thing that we're dancing around, and that's race. That two people that are more different than the rest were decided that, okay, we can lose one of them and it doesn't matter because they're not quite fitting in. Because, yeah, like when I first saw a CC vote, I thought that was like Rachel or David just like grasping at straws because the vote was being split between them. And then there was more, and it was like, that story was not told. And not even a way like, oh, we're going to surprise you with it. Like, it's just, why her? And yeah, like I said, they did get one scene of them talking, and I think maybe why we didn't get a lot of footage is that there's no real good explanation for it, except for the thing that nobody is comfortable talking about, because heaven knows that Facebook hasn't taught us that this is a real thing that people struggle with. So yeah,
right.
But instead of talking about that, we should talk about ketchup chips, because I think that's what people have been looking forward to for the entire episode. I like that we've been teasing it.
All right.
We get to see somebody live on camera try ketchup chips for the first time. I have to say, it's actually always surprised me that ketchup chips aren't a thing in the United States.
We have all sorts of weird flavor combinations. I mean, we got sriracha chips, I think, before you guys did.
Mm-hmm.
Why not ketchup? Because we put ketchup on most potato-ish things, I think, as well. Anyway, here we go. Ketchup chip down the hatch. Hopefully I do not choke on this and die, as I have on almost both of those other two.
Do you not produce enough saliva is the question.
That tastes like ketchup on a potato chip.
There you go.
I don't know what I was expecting, but that is what that tastes like.
Well, let's say, for everyone, I tried to get him to get Old Dutch potato chips because that's even more Canadian. But, he would. Unfortunately, as some Canadians even know, that you can't get them at every store, only the good stores. So it's going with the lesser one. I'd say Lay's doesn't load it up with as much of the ketchup-y flavor, but do you feel like this is something that's been missing from your life?
I don't know. They're weird, and yet I'm going back for more.
Yeah.
Trying it
So I got a friend who's way into them. So when we have a bowl of ketchup chips at a party, he's always trying to get the ones that are more red because as you're probably seeing, they don't evenly distribute the flavor tasting because I'm guessing the machine just kind of puts a bunch of ketchup dust on it.
Spray some ketchup on them.
And we should tell people because they might be like, "Oh my God, that's not even the most Canadian chip." You actually also experienced all dressed chips.
Yes. I saw when I was curling, by the way, which, man, this story is getting more and more Canadian.
Did you get to drink Tim Hortons while you were doing it?
No, if only. Although, let's have a segment that is... So, I did end up, while I was curling, they had, some, snacks sitting around. And there were chips. Those look like... I don't know, cheddar and sour cream, whatever it is that we have in the States that I'm not a big chip person, but I've at least, had them and seen them enough. I was like, oh, that's probably cheddar and sour cream. And so I grabbed them because they look orangey. And I try some. I was like, this is weird. And I said, what flavor are these? And they said, I kept calling them all flavor or something, but it's all dressed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all dressed. And I was like, oh, I was supposed to try these. And I would say they're pretty tasty.
Yeah, I don't know how to define the taste of all dressed chips. I also don't even know if I truly like them, but they are a different taste that once you start eating, you kind of keep eating.
Yeah,
which is, I think. I'm sorry.
I went back for more.
Yeah. Well, that is the test of a chip, right? It's that you can't just stop. You have to kind of keep snacking on it until, the salt takes over. So there you go. You've had the finest of Canadian cuisine. So of those, let's go to the four. We didn't get the live taste, but of the four, which do you most recommend?
Putting them in order, I'll go Coffee Crisp number 1. That's a winner. All Dressed is probably number 2.
Fair.
And then, I can't really decide if I think the ketchup chips were gross or if they're just interesting enough that I would put them ahead of Smarties, which are a very familiar flavor. So
I think
say ketchup chips are third.
Yes. I think that was the perfect description of ketchup chips, is that you can't tell if they're gross or not. My wife thinks they're disgusting and hates them if every once in a while want to have them. I don't know if they're good. It's just they're something that I had when I was a child, and thus I still have. It's just a nice comfort struggle food or something. I don't know. So there you go. And you had smoked meat as well, didn't you?
I had smoked meat, Montreal smoked meat.
Yes.
So I was recommended this by Canadians. We asked on Twitter, tell me your Canadian food recommendations, whatever the cultural foods of Canada. Not poutine, because, come on. Anyway, so I tried it. It's a roast beef sandwich. It's not it's not all that different. It's smoked, but it's a roast beef sandwich.
Yeah, this is where I shock everybody. I hate smoked meat sandwiches. Not a fan at all. Yeah, so now you just have to have poutine.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if I had it, because I know we were in Quebec before, and I think it was a mission to have it, but I don't remember if we did or not. I feel like no, because I would remember, right? It's gross stuff on top of fries.
Yeah, it's gravy and cheese curds on fries.
Yeah, and I'm not really a fry person anyway, so I'd probably remember the last time I ate fries.
All right, getting back to Survivor, but I think this segment is what's going to light the internet on fire.
You think so? This is going viral right here? Me talking about Canadian foods? Okay.
Absolutely. Hey, I don't see, Rob talking about this if he still does podcasts. All right, so we got an episode, and last week we talked about first impressions for the worst way to meet these people through, bios and, hype videos and such. Now we've actually seen a bit of them. So who did you find that you liked?
It was funny because a lot of it confirmed some suspicions that I had. Some of them, it's, we discussed this in the preview podcast, but someone like Zeke or Hannah, first impression was like, no. It's Sunday, same thing. No. And then I got through some interviews, some bios and everything, and I said, you know what? Like, they're growing on me. By the end of that episode, breakout star. What about you?
100%. I actually tweeted this, and obviously I didn't mention it, so it didn't make sense, but like, damn you for making me like somebody, because I was all in on Zeke. It starts early with a few of his, probably pre-planned type segments, like with, Twitter is awful and I'm on Twitter, which I believe actually was maybe in a preview or at one point or something. But the scene with the fire was the big clincher, right? And I'll keep talking because you're eating.
I had to try the coffee crisp again. It was good.
Absolutely, you should. It's one of the best. Not just that he did it, but the way he is able to articulate and kind of live in the moment and really just kind of let us feel the emotion that he was feeling. That's when I completely won over, and I'm on Team Zeke.
Yeah, and then we get the nice start of a growth arc, which is weird because growing from nothing. We didn't have any impression of Zeke before this episode, really. Mm-hmm. I, for one, love that, Mari talks about, none of us have real jobs. And then it's like, Zeke, asset manager. That's a real job. And then Zeke talks about how he hates all these little kids. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sold. That's it. That's all I needed.
Yeah, I think we might be giving the wrong impression the way I've been complaining about all these, pre-planned segments and the battle of generations. I don't want to give the impression that it's wrong to hate young people. It's absolutely all right. It's just the way that the Gen Xers have been going about it, creating these false dichotomies and we know the value of hard work when we don't know. It's just that young people are awful, and not because necessarily they're millennials, because they're young. So when Zeke was able to articulate it, I think that's when he really won us over.
Yeah. I mean, you like to associate with people like yourself. Zeke.
That's right.
That was it. But so other than Zeke, I liked Mari for me. I kind of anticipated that one preseason. Mari was good. Adam, other than doing this weird screamy, shouty confessional thing, very good at it. If I had an Adam in fantasy leagues, I'd be very excited because that kid just looked like a winner, man. Michaela, really not a ton of confessional time, but again, the face was saying everything, and she just looked like she popped off the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think she had mostly that moment on the mat and stuff. We don't really know where she stands right now. Obviously she's not part of the Triforce, but we don't know how well she does the others. I liked Mari quite a bit too. I think actually Hannah came off fairly well. What about the other side? Anyone?
Yeah, so from that group, I mean, if you're comparing personalities, the millennials have them. Gen X, it's hit or miss. We didn't see Lucy or Cece at all, basically.
Nope.
The ones that I would say for me stuck out would be Sunday, Jessica, and David. Jessica, I came in not really having any expectations of. I mean, most of her pregame press was nothing jumped out at me. And just And like now on Twitter, she's embracing the fact that she's got these ridiculous like zombie-looking eyes from the infections that she's got. So, she grew on me a lot. And Sunday was exactly what I expected. She's Sunday.
Yeah. No, Jessica also impressed me too. I mean, she handled the bit with the little, advantage wrapped around pretty well. I also like the way she managed David, and that she wasn't letting him off the hook, and she was able to confront him to try and get information, but at the same time she didn't push him away. It was clear in the conversations and the way that she was carrying herself that she had the power in that relationship, and it was up to David to do something with her. And that's good because it means that she's just not trying to hang on to the edges of like an alliance. I think that means she'll be, a key part of it. I also liked Ken because he's so attractive and it's hard to
I was going to say, what made you like him other than the fact that he's really handsome?
So that's enough. Okay, because
we're so shallow around here.
Matt, our live blogger, he talked about how attractive Ken is. Matt is a very straight dude. I'm a very straight dude, and it's like, hey, that guy's hot. And then even better is like one of our commenters, Evan Scout and BK, as she describes herself, very gay, and she still finds him super hot. So that's how attractive Ken is that he just appeals to everyone along the Kinsey scale. It just doesn't matter where. He's that good looking a dude.
I did love that she was like, what is happening to me? She had like 3 or 4 tweets about how hot he was, and she's like, what is going on? I'm having a crisis here. That's how I felt about Burton and Pearl Islands. Like, wait, what are these feelings?
My wife is like, yeah, I can tell he's a model. I'm like, pipe down, lady. Unlike models of the past, you're like, really? No, it's pretty obvious. Like, he's got leading man looks. Like, he could be like on an NBC show. Maybe he's actually a good person and good at the game. That much we don't know. But, if you're looking at the hot person of the season, I'm not sure there's any of the ladies, but, Ken can help in whichever way you want. All right, other side of the coin. Who did you not like coming out of this episode?
I actually... whether to the episode's credit or to casting's credit, there weren't really any that jumped out at me that I was like actively disliking. I mean, there were some people that I thought were fine. There were some that different about. I didn't have any sort of opinion. People like Lucy, people that didn't get really on screen. There were some that I kind of liked. So, I mean, there were really none. Even the Triforce, the Bros, and Figgy, like, I like the role they're going to serve. I don't, I'm not going to root for them, but I can see that they're a crucial part of a story, and I like that at least.
They annoyed me just because it's like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't have much expectations for you, but still, come on.
They're doing exactly what Survivor cast them to do.
Right. Well, what I worry is just if that's indicative of what it's going to be, and this is going to be like, a bunch of young douches, and if they gain control in the doomsday scenario I laid out before, then, this really could be Nicaragua again. So, yeah, just a little tease of that. I'll also say enough with David, all right? It's okay, but that dude needs to chill.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just that he was entertaining just because... He's not exactly Cochran. There's something different about him. Like he's just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like really. Right now I'm okay with it, but if he doesn't adjust soon, the shtick will wear a little thin with me.
Yeah, I mean if he's still covering his ears like 4 episodes from now because loud sounds, then it's gonna be like, all right, tone it down.
Hey, besides being super hot, that's a fun thing that Ken did when he had like the walking stick and stuff. And, like trying to show David, see, it's not so bad.
Oh yeah, real winner of a personality. Let a bug crawl on him.
That's awesome. My kid would have been amazed by that. Oh my god, it's a bug.
He's gonna get. It's that. Remember the 30 Rock episode where John Hamm lives in the handsome bubble? That's Ken's life.
I think he's already there. Like that's why I think he was on the outs of there because for one, those other guys just like that guy. And like when he was like slowing everybody's like, I spent a year off the grid and I know how to do things. It's like sure, whatever, pretty guy. Yeah.
Well, and that's why they were. David's like, oh, I think he's got an idol. And everybody's like, no, he's just handsome. He's fine. Don't worry about it.
All right, so those are just kind of our first impressions of what we've seen now. What do we think is going to happen next week? So we do predictions every episode. What we typically do, while there are multiple tribes, is predict one from each tribe, because trying to predict who will lose challenges is a fool's errand. Obviously, trying to predict who's going to go home is also a fool's errand, but
Less
that.
so.
So let's start with what the previews seem to be suggesting.
Okay, so there's a hint that it might be a situation. There's at the very least the doctor is summoned to the Gen X camp.
And the words heart attack are used.
Yes, right. Which obviously then it's going to the Gen X camp because they're the olds.
Although Caleb was the one that nearly died last year, so maybe, but it's the olds because we also saw some reaction at the olds.
It's the olds. So I feel like that's a red herring. Because they said something like a heart attack. I'm sure there's lots of things like a heart attack.
Like panic attacks.
No doctor.
That's right. You're an accountant.
And if it's a panic attack of that tribe.
And
Mm-hmm.
that could help him.
Yes, because they're going to tell him, calm the F down. It'll come from. That's actually my theory, is that I think that for him, and he says, this may help me. The doctor told me to do such and such or whatever, and this is going to help me.
I've engendered sympathy from my tribe or something.
Sure. So, like I said, I think that's a red herring. If they end up going to tribal, I'm not going to make this complicated. Cece's next to go.
All right. I don't think it is a red herring. I think that it's Paul that's laid out there. And when a 58-year-old man has something that's like a heart attack, you don't mess around and you say, all right, you're going home.
Okay.
If I'm wrong,
I guess we'll see.
Or if you're right and the Gen X still wins, who do you think from the Millennials will go
home? Again, I'm not going to try to get too creative here. They got 2 to 3 minority women over there. So those would be the easy picks. But I'm just going to say it's a woman, but not a minority woman. I'll say Michelle.
All right. Reason?
Because she's Michelle.
Sure. Okay. I'm also not getting all that creative. I think that the story that we got developed about the Triforce and people recognizing that these popular dummies are teaming up is a thing. And they'll try to break that up really quickly. And I think they'll feel like the connective tissue to all 4 or the 3 is Figgy. Because they'll think that maybe both guys are won over by her beguiling ways or whatever, or at the very least that we'll be able to put those guys to work if we just get rid of her, and that's who they vote for, Figgy.
Or at the very least, it's the same thing that always happens in Survivor. When there's an attraction between a guy and a girl, you always take out the woman because
that's right.
Survivor.
Yes, you need to teach the guy a lesson.
Exactly.
So let's fridge his girlfriend. All right. God, why do we like this show? It's so awful.
We love this show, and this happens all the time.
And here's the thing: I think people who watch get frustrated with the show for it, but it's not the show's fault. They're not saying vote out the girl to punish the guy. They're not saying get rid of the minority. It probably says a lot more, if anything, uncomfortable things about us as humans. That this is, when divided into this group and having to, make quick decisions about who can stay and who can go. They keep doing this. And it's not just those people are awful. You look at some of your more evolved people who come out and they realize, oh yeah, we did that too, Max and Stream voted out So Kim first, Jonathan Penner voted out, I can't remember.
A lot of people. He's been on 3 times.
Yeah, obviously his first time, he wasn't able to vote out a minority right away. Although maybe he was, because I don't think the white people ever went to tribal council. So anyway, yeah. Anyway. it's a problematic thing because human beings are, and maybe that's where it's interesting. And obviously, though, the show doesn't really want to delve into it too much.
Sure.
Well, I guess it's time to talk about the other things that go on with us.
Sure.
Do we have anything more on this episode?
No, we're good. I think we basically summed it up.
I think so.
So you can find our stuff at purplerockpodcast.com. We do a live blog there. Matt did that for us this week. It got, I think as of right now, it's like a little less than 700 comments on there. We are churning out the comments. I imagine it's going to be like that a lot this season. Now that AV Club shut down their Survivor coverage, we got a bunch of their people. And RIP AV Club Survivor coverage. But we also have Fantasy League still going on. You can pick your team up until the second episode airs. Just find the post on there, throw a comment in there. I'll reply to you and say, here's your team. You cannot pick a team that somebody else already has, but all the rules are in there for you. Anything else?
So what we're going to do this year, we're not going to make John Tries Canadian Snacks a regular segment for every episode. And we don't have any other planned segments like come up with ridiculous evacuation scenarios or anything like that. So we're just going to try and maybe keep it a little more simple this season. As we've said many times, and it's not just ass kicking, a lot of what makes this whole community good is the fact that there's community, there's other people that do things. So we want to give you guys a chance to participate a bit more in the show. We're not going to go back to doing voicemails because we found that was just too arduous for most people to do. But we do want to, every episode, have a regular mailbag segment. So after the episode airs, or if it's something that's a little more evergreen, you can send us emails or tweet at us.
Tweets, comments,
DMs.
However you want to get in touch with us.
Send us questions, and we will try every episode to at least answer 3 of them. And those, the questions don't even necessarily have to be Survivor-based. Obviously, I imagine they would be, but they could be about the podcast itself. Or, as teased last week, you could be asking John more about his wild trip into the foreign land. Or if you're interested, as we discussed last week, this is when you can ask John your financial questions. So
excited.
We'd be so excited for that. We want to have a mailbag every week. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to find us on Twitter, to either DM or at us. The show is Purple Rock Pod. I am Purple Rock Andy.
I am Purple Rock John.
And as we said on our website, it's purplerockpodcast.com. The podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. And I think that's about it.
All right. And as we mentioned, this week we're going to do a mailbag question. It's totally unrelated to Survivor. Andy already spoiled it. It's about personal finance. If you're not interested in that, I totally understand. This is a good time for you to shut the podcast off because I'll spoil it for you. It's about student loans. So if you don't want to hear it, I'm not offended. Shut the podcast off. I don't care. We're done talking about Survivor. We'll catch you guys again next week. But for those of you still here, you can do what Andy is doing and play on his phone, or you can listen to this very instructive personal finance advice. This was sent to me, I guess. I was going to say us, but come on. They didn't send it to Andy. This was sent to me by Guis.
I paid my student loans. I'll just say that.
Okay. I never had any. So, anyway, Guis sent this to me. Hypothetical scenario. I thought it could apply to other people. So I'm going to give a good general answer as best I can. Qualifications being A, that I have an MBA, but who cares? B, that I love personal finance stuff.
You guys cannot even know. Sometimes we just set him off by telling him our horrible personal finance things. He's just like, you're hurting me physically.
Yes. I never mention financial mistakes in front of me. It pains me. So anyway, Guis's question, say, just as an example, you have some set amount of student loan debt. We used an example of $10,000. Uncle Moneybags or some other way you inherit $20,000. Someone is giving you $20,000 for some reason. Should you then a student loan, pay it all off right away? Assuming in this instance that you have a relatively low interest rate, which is pretty common in today's environment, at least in America, say
Same.
under 5%. The answer almost always, and again, I have to hedge on this because there are exceptions, but almost always going to be no. Lots of reasons, and I'll go over them very quickly here. For one, there's potential loan forgiveness. You can check into your loan. It's generally if you work in certain sectors, if you're a teacher, you work in the public sector some way, some healthcare loans are like this. Basically, just
what level of teacher would that be? Would just be like, say you help teach university. Would that be?
It varies. I mean, it's going to depend on what the terms of your loan were or any other federal, state, local programs, whatever there might be. Forgiveness. So again, that's something you're going to have to look into about your own type of loan. Your interest is tax deductible. Even if you're just taking the standard deduction, this applies again to Americans. Sorry, foreigners. I don't know enough about your system.
Also in Canada, interest is tax deductible.
So even like I said, if you take the standard deduction, you can still take the student loan interest deduction, assuming that you're under certain income levels. And despite what Twitter analytics tells us about our audience being super rich and super educated, I'm going to guess that some of you might be below $150,000 a year. Just throwing that out there, that maybe there's a few of you that might apply to. So the important thing about that is that essentially makes your interest rate even lower. If you want to figure out how much lower, just at me on Twitter or send me an email, whatever. I'll even calculate it for you if you really care, because I do like this stuff. Another thing, if you got that money, historically, you're going to get a better return than the 5% or less that you're being, that your interest rate is, if you invest it. And I would generally always, unless you've maxed out your 401ks, your Roth IRAs, all that stuff, which again, I'm guessing probably not. So in that instance, keep paying your loan off. You can pay slightly more towards principal. I'm always in favor of that, but don't pay it off entirely. Instead, push that money either into a Roth if you're under 25% tax bracket, 3% tax bracket, A, good for you. And B, probably put it into a traditional IRA. Get an index fund. Just do something really easy, unless you're really good with stocks, which again, I'm guessing you're not.
If you're listening to a guy on a podcast, probably not.
That's what I'm saying. If you were listening to a Survivor podcast and we're like, yes, personal financial advice, probably not. So get an index fund, look for really low expense ratios. Some of them slightly higher expense ratios. A good like benchmark, aim for like 0.25% or under. They do exist. I'm not going to give certain brand recommendations, but yeah, they're out there. And if you really want to know, you can at me or email me or whatever, and I'll tell you the brands. I don't care. So that's it. Like I said, I tried to knock this out. It's a much more complicated topic. I'd be glad to talk to any of you more about it if you really care. Otherwise, send us stuff about Survivor or anything else. Ask Andy about special delicacies that I have not yet tried.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's a show. Because we're doing it live, we can't hit play on theme music, but if you're listening to the podcast, it's going to magically appear
Right now.